everybody, it's Sunshine, and so I decided to do a book talk on Stars Above, and this is going to be a bit different from most of my book talks, because I feel like I've covered all the significant things I have to say about the characters, and I've talked a ton about the theme about how there are times to lie, and so I decided that I am going for this, after I read each story, there are 9 stories, short stories in this compilation, I kind of like wrote a paragraph about what I thought about it. And so I read these stories during October, month of October, this month. And I read them pretty much just on the weekends because I didn't have that much time with school. Alright, so again, I forgot to say this during the book talk, but I want to add that, first of all, this is a hardcover edition. You could probably tell, but just so you know, when I refer to the page numbers, it says Fuel and Friends right here, like with the winter copy I have. It's hardcover. And the other thing is this will contain spoilers about the Lunar Chronicles. Alright, so I read The Keeper on October 8th and 9th, and I definitely enjoyed it. I thought it was very interesting because the reader doesn't see much of Michelle Benoit in the Lunar Chronicles quartet, and so I was extra fascinated to hear from her point of view and learn more about what happened with her and Logan Tanner and Lynn Guerin. And additionally, I want to point out that in this story it was confirmed that Cinder was named because of how she survived the fire, which is something I've speculated about. I read Glitches back in April, right after I read Cinder, because Glitches was in the back of the Cinder book. But on October 9th, I read it again, and I find it to be a very touching story. First, I find it so bittersweet how much Cinder wants to fit in with her adoptive family. On Stars Above, page 79, Cinder is thinking about showing Adrienne Guerin how she fixed Aiko, and she thinks if only she could show it to Adrienne, even Guerin, that she wasn't a useless addition to their family after all, that she was grateful they'd taken her in when no one else would, that she wanted to belong to them. So it's so sad that Adrienne and Pearl were so cruel to Cinder and she just wanted to belong. I love seeing Peony's kindness towards Cinder. On Stars Above, page 58, Peony latches onto Cinder's arm and leads Cinder into the house, and on page 59, she invites Cinder to watch Nightmare Island with her. And on pages 65 to 68, she plays dress up with Cinder. So I like the story Glitches because to me it's a really touching story how Peony's so kind to Cinder, and yeah. So I first read The Queen's Army in July, right after I finished Scarlet. I didn't reread it, but I wanted to say what I thought about it. I didn't like it as much as the other short stories, pretty much just because I really wasn't that into the fighting, and it's also pretty dark how the boys are taken from their families and forced to fight, and though obviously some of the other stories, like I just said, for Glitches for example, and so some of the stories are pretty sad too, but this one there's also just a lot of fighting, like the whole violence and constant fights for dominance amongst the pack members. So it's not Marissa Meyer's fault. It's not her writing that I don't like in The Queen's Army. It's just I'm not really into that type of story. On October 9th, I read Carswell's Guide to Being Lucky, and Carswell Thorne isn't a favorite character of mine, as I'm pretty sure I've said before. I find him arrogant and at times pretty selfish. His selfishness was very prominent in Carswell's Guide to Being Lucky. He would talk often about like making money, and he'd con people into doing stuff for him. But I did find it interesting to get a glimpse into his life at school and kind of like compare, I guess just see his experience at school and kind of how it compares to like my experience at school. So I read After Sunshine Passes By on October 10th, and I found it to be a very sad story. It's similar to Glitches in that the main character really wants to belong but is rejected and mistreated by people. On Stars Above, page 167, Cress imagines Sybil bragging about her to the Queen, telling Her Majesty of the young prodigy in her care, who could be so much more useful to the crown if she weren't trapped in those awful dormitories all the time. Cress hoped that if she could impress Sybil enough, someday the Queen would have to take notice of her, Maybe she could be offered a job and she could prove that shells weren't dangerous after all, that they want to belong and be good, loyal Lunars just like anyone. And on Stars Above page 170, Cress thinks this could be her chance to prove to Sybil, to everyone, that she was more than just a shell. She was valuable. She deserved to be a citizen of Luna. So granted, the people Cress wants to be loyal to are terrible people, but as a 9-year-old girl who hasn't yet been exposed to the Lunar Society and their motives, Cress really doesn't know any better. So I find After Sunshine Passes By to be sadder than Glitches because Cress is absolutely no one. She has no friends, and at the end of the story she's left isolated on the satellite. So I feel terrible for both Cinder and Cress because they're both very mistreated. But I suppose I find Glitches to be a bit sweeter of a story than After Sunshine Passes By because Peony befriends Cinder. But in After Sunshine Passes By, Cress is nobody. On October 16th, I read The Princess and the Guard, and I liked it. I enjoyed how it showed some of the development of Winter and Jason's relationship, seeing as in the main quartet, Winter and Jason have already had such a backstory that the reader never sees. With the other couples, Cinder and Kai, Scarlet and Wolf, Cress and Thorn, they meet for the first time during the quartet, so the reader sees their relationships begin. But with Winter and Jason, it was different, so I liked The Princess and the Guard because it showed the development of that relationship. On October 21st, I read The Little Android, and it was unique because, unlike the other short stories in Stars Above, The Little Android didn't center on any of the main characters from the Lunar Chronicles. Rather, it loosely paralleled to The Little Mermaid, and I found it interesting that Cinder plays the role of a sea witch. I believe, I'm pretty sure that in one of the versions of The Little Mermaid, the sea witch doesn't have malicious intentions. So that fits because Cinder obviously didn't have malicious intentions in giving Star the body. On Stars Above, page 264, Cinder frowns sympathetically at Star, which shows Cinder was sympathetic. And on Stars Above, page 266, Cinder warns Star about all the things wrong with the escort body, which proves Cinder wasn't trying to trick Star into thinking the body was better than it was or something. So on October 22nd, I read The Mechanic, and it really threw me back to mid-April when I read the first chapter of Cinder. And it's so interesting that when I barely knew anything about the Lunar Chronicles, I read the scene in which Kai came to Cinder's booth in the market from Cinder's perspective. And then after reading the whole series and seeing how everything turned out, I read the very same scene from Kai's perspective. So I just found that really neat. And I read Something Old, Something New today, October 30th, and I really loved it. I thought it was so great to see that Cinder, Kai, Scarlet, Wolf, Cress, Thorn, Winter, and Jason were living good lives 2 years after the events of the quartet, and I'm just really happy for them. So that's it. I guess that's my last book talk about the Lunar Chronicles, and I'm really sad that it's over, but I also wouldn't want it to just keep going on just so it could, because I think it ended in a good way, and like I said, I'm really happy that all the characters are having happy lives, and that's really nice to see. So I love the series, and Sunshine River signing out.